Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley, and this is Reading with Your Kids. We are beaming out to all corners of the world from our beautiful studios in the lovely neighborhood of Reedville, the gem of Boston, Massachusetts. And we literally are beaming out to all of the world. We've been downloaded to every single continent on the planet, including Antarctica, and we are so very proud of that. Our mission is to help all families grow closer through reading. And we do that by traveling the globe through the power of books, meeting wonderful authors and discovering stories that bring people together no matter where they live. You can help us with this mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show, no matter where they live. Tell your kids' teachers, their principal, the crossing guard, and let them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And if they aren't in one of the wonderful cities served by that network, they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Audible, YouTube, Player FM. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. Three amazing guests. Later in the show, we will be meeting Jeffrey and Laura May. They are here to celebrate our amazing minds. But first up, Katherine Schwarzenegger Pratt is here to celebrate Kat and Brandy. This episode is brought to you by OnceUponADance.com. Take storytelling to a whole new level. With Once Upon a Dance, your child will do more than just listen. They'll move, imagine, and connect. It's a literary adventure and a performance all in one. From graceful turns to energetic leaps, each story brings an immersive experience that engages both body and mind. Whether your child enjoys unicorns, bats, zombies, or cats, Once Upon a Dance has a Dance It Out story just for them. Celebrate joyful movement and visit OnceUponADance.com or find them at your favorite social media platform. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Trumpet, the Miracle Wolf Pup series. There's a brand new book in the series, and we're so excited to tell you all about it. Trumpet becomes a mom. In this exciting book, Trumpet and Lighthawk, now a bonded pair, start their own family with their very first litter of pups. Families can read together, schools can explore the importance of wolf packs and conservation, and Trumpet fans everywhere can celebrate this milestone in her incredible journey. Grab your copy today. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, select bookstores, and the Wolf Conservation Center, where Trumpet and her family live. Plus, 50% of all profits go right back to supporting the Wolf Conservation Center, with more donated to Lighthawk Conservation Flying. So grab your book today and have a group haul for Trumpet and her family. Join us right now from the beautiful state of California. Our guest is here today to celebrate her picture book. It's called Kat and Brandy. Please welcome to the show, Katherine Schwarzenegger Pratt. Katherine, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Delighted to have you on Reading with Your Kids. Kat and Brandy, this sounds like a really fun story. There's something I related to it in some ways. Tell us about the story, please.
Oh, great. Well, I'm excited to hear how you related to it in some ways. I wrote this book. It's about a young girl and a pony, and it's a book that really celebrates the healing power of animals. And it's a really sweet story that is based off of my own experience growing up. And it's a story about overcoming your fears, about courage, about bravery. And I'm really excited to be able to have it come out and to see how people enjoy it. And I'm really hoping that it's a book that also sparks conversation around, working through your fears, having something that you're afraid of, and how you kind of navigate your way through that. And it's something that now, as a mom to 3 little kids, I always keep in mind the conversations that come from reading books to your children, and whether you're a parent or a caregiver, the kind of natural ways that conversations around important topics come up. So that was a big thing for me when writing this book, and I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is based on an experience you had falling off a horse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's based off of my experience really being introduced to a pony growing up who came from a very challenged and troubled background, and was really reluctant to, the horse was really reluctant to trust humans based on her past experience. And I was in a position where I myself found myself being in a situation where I was also afraid of, horseback riding and being around horses in general, just having been, thrown off a horse. And I was introduced to her in a very, just coincidental moment. And her and I really spent a lot of time almost having like natural equine therapy, where it was a lot of patience, time, love, and care to even have her be comfortable around me, and also have me be comfortable around her. And it was through a lot of time of, working through those fears and being in each other's presence where I felt comfortable to actually get back on the horse and have this really amazing bond and connection with her. And I think I look back on my high school experience and my adolescence and think that like the healing power of animals was such a profound experience that I was lucky enough to have growing up. And this can be, when I talk about the healing power of animals, it's with all animals. So it can be a goldfish, it can be a hamster, a rabbit, a dog, a cat, a horse, whatever the animal looks like, being able to have that presence of that unconditional love and that, just feeling of another creature or being accepting and loving you for who you are is such a gift to be able to have in the presence of children. And then also, of course, as adults, as we get older. And I really felt that with Brandy growing up. And so I wanted to kind of have that be a story, because it took a lot of time and patience for me to get comfortable and for me to feel brave and work through my fears. And I think that translated over into a lot of different areas of my life. And also, seeing my two daughters now as they get older work through their fears. This was all really mindfully done on my part to be able to have those conversations come up in this book.
I love that. I certainly can relate to the healing power of animals. A couple of years ago, I was laid up. I tore the quad tendons on both of my legs and was unable to walk for a few months. And my dear grumpy beagle Augie was it spent most of the time in the bed with me as I was recovering, and that was awesome. So I can definitely relate to that. I can really relate to being thrown off a horse. I've been on a horse 3 times in my life and ended up on my keister all 3 times.
Yeah.
I never
Not
got
for
back
everyone.
I never got back on a horse, but I have ridden an elephant successful. So
Wow.
I'm good with riding animals.
Yeah, that's a huge accomplishment. So well done for you.
Tell me, it seems to have gone when I first started reading with your kids back in 2017, it seemed like parents were really intent on bubble wrapping their kids so that they didn't experience any kind of disappointment, scrapes, bumps, anything like that. I think we're kind of over that now, or at least we're coming through that. But tell me, why do you think it's so important to allow our kids to get a scrape, to get a bump, to get thrown off a horse? How does that benefit? Talk to one of those helicopter parents who would say, "Oh, I'm horrified. Never let my child take a chance at getting hurt."
I mean, I think it's, it's all a balance. My oldest, my daughter is 5 years old, and then I have a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. So I'm still, new in the parenting space. And I think as parents, it's a natural desire to protect your child and to, not want them to experience things that they would view as being harmful or hurtful or have negative experiences. And also that's met with, as you're saying, like bubble wrapping our kids. But I think it's, you have to let your kid experience some things. I even now that I look back on my experiences growing up, I have like vivid memories of when I would fall off a horse and my mom would make me get right back up on the horse again. So I didn't have this like constant fear of being around horses, and just also the messaging there of, getting back up and trying something again, even if you fall. And I think that translated over into a variety of different areas in my life, of course. But I look back on that and I always said to my mom, I'm like, I don't know how did you do that as like a mom? Your kid falls off a horse and you're like, get back up again. And now that I have kids of my own, I see them like they are around horses and around animals. And it takes like everything in me to make sure that they get up and try again, even if they have a scrape or they're really upset. And of course my mom did it in a very nurturing way. And I try to do it in a very nurturing way as well. But I try to think of, the lessons that they learn in those moments, and also the confidence that comes from getting up and trying again, and just the overall messaging, because there will be times in their life where they will fall down and need to pick themselves back up again and try again in so many different areas. And when they're little, it's, falling off their bike or falling off their horse, or, tumbling down a slide, or whatever the scenario is, or falling off a tree. There are so many different scenarios where kids, fall down and you got to get back up again and try again. So it's a balance though. I think if you ask my husband, he would say that I'm like, like we were at a park yesterday and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is it's so nerve wracking, because you want your kids to be kids. And then also you want them to be mindful of like, not breaking their arm right away. So I read a lot of, Jonathan Haidt's, books, and listen to his interviews just about the importance of, really allowing kids to be kids and, go out and ride their bikes and fall off and, have those experiences. But I think as a parent, it's obviously easier said than done.
It is. But that joy, the real joy the kids experience when they fall down and get up and do something and are successful. I just experienced this in a little way this morning. My kids are adults right now, but my beautiful wife and I were asked to hang out with our 2-year-old neighbor, who's just an awesome little guy. And he was trying to do something, and he's trying to pick up something and bring it over to me, and he kept dropping it. And I said, dude, you can do it. Come on. And when he finally was able to pick it up and bring it over to me, and, goes, dude, you did it. Great job. He was just so happy. And I would have robbed that from him if I had just gone over and did it for him.
Of course. Yeah, no, listen, all of these experiences, like you can say so much to your children, like, you're great, you're brave, you're confident, you can do this, you can do that. But having them actually do those things and get that feeling of confidence and getting that feeling of bravery or working through their fears isn't something that we can just give to our kids. It's something that they really have to experience on their own and feel on their own and work through on their own. So it was really important to me in this book to be able to have the character in the book be afraid from an experience, be afraid of something, take their time to work through that fear and, acknowledge the fear, work through it, and then come out the other end being really confident in herself, brave, feeling like she was really able to tap into her inner bravery. Because there will be times, as their children where they need to be brave, or they need to be, able to work through a fear. And then, of course, as we get older, we have those situations all the time. And so I really wanted that theme to be present in the book where, yes, there was a fear. Yes, we get scared of things. And then how do we work through them so we don't allow those fears to paralyze us and not be able to have certain experiences. So I really think a lot of that comes from, conversation with a parent or a caregiver of how you do that. Because I think, we can tell our kids, like, pull it together and don't be scared. Like, you don't need to be scared of getting on a bicycle, or you don't need to be scared of going down a slide. But until they really do that for themselves, they get this other, other kind of feeling of confidence in themselves that we can't give to them as parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was important to me to have that be a really big theme in the book.
Yeah. I'm curious, this is in some ways autobiographical, but you are also writing, not only for the kids at large, but also for your kids. And I'm wondering, what was that like in your head, like telling your story, but I'm telling my story so I can tell my kids my story and also the world. Did you have a whole lot of directors in your head saying, no, go this way, go that way?
I mean, I had a great test group in my children, which is a really big blessing. I think, I wrote my first children's book before I was married, before I had kids. And I've always known that I wanted to have kids of my own. And I've loved being around kids. I come from a very big family. So I've always been in the presence of children at a variety of different ages and phases of my life. I've learned a huge amount since writing my first children's book, just about, what kind of stories kids respond to, what kind of language they respond to, illustrations, storylines. And I have always kind of my kids are obsessed with reading books and also just obsessed with hearing stories. So I've really been able to have my kids be able to hear me telling them stories about real life experiences and then seeing their feedback, like what do they really hang on to? What do they really respond to? What kind of illustrations in other books do they really find to be engaging and fun and interesting? And so for me, like finding Petra Brown, who's the illustrator of this book, came from me being with my kids and reading other books that she had illustrated and seeing how much they loved her illustrations, how they responded. They really were able to have this beautiful, imaginative experience when reading her books and then also being able to just stare at her illustrations. So that's how that came. But then being able to just tell my kids my own stories and then seeing how they responded and where you might need a little bit more, flair in certain parts of the story, or where they really hang on to, oh my gosh, she fell off. Is she okay? Or how did she work through that? How did she get back on the horse? I also fell off a horse. How do I, the kind of conversations that come from that have been really exciting for me and also really eye-opening and have allowed me to learn so much as a parent myself, and have also allowed for me to have great conversations with my kids. So it's been a great test group to have them in my life and like give them trial runs of every version of the story that I've had.
It sounds like you are the parent that I created Reading with Your Kids for, because I know that my relationship with my now adult kids is all based on those conversations that we had reading books together when they were on my lap and then when they were older in middle school and high school and talking about the different books. You've mentioned conversations with the kids so much. Why do you think it is so important for us to have those deep, meaningful, honest conversations with our kids?
I mean, it's so important as parents to have conversations with your kids and then also to just allow your children to feel comfortable having conversations. It was such a gift that my parents gave to myself and my siblings, was like this relationship and understanding that we could come to them about anything and have conversations about anything in a really open and honest and non-judgmental way. And that started from the very beginning and continues today, which I feel so grateful for. So that's always my goal with my own children, is to be able to have conversations with them from a very early age and to allow them to feel comfortable to come to myself and my husband with anything or any question that they might have. And for me now, being a parent and finding myself reading so many books with my kids, it was important to me that I kept in mind the parent or caregiver when writing this book, Kat and Brandy, because there are so many situations, and I'm sure you relate to this, where you find yourself reading a book to your child and you're like, did they not think of us? Like, did they not think of like how we want to read this story? Or the message in the story or the conversations that might come from reading this book to a child. So I was really, mindful of that, of, keeping the interest and engagement of the person reading the story to the child, and then also keeping the interest level of the actual child who's hearing the story or looking at the pictures in the book. And keeping in mind, when you're done with that book, or even when you're in the middle of reading it, what are the natural questions that are going to come up from the child to the person reading? And then what are the natural ways that you as the parent or caregiver can spark the conversation around a fear that the child might have? Or what is it to be brave? How do you tap into bravery? How do you feel confident in yourself? How do you tap into courage? What is courage? Kids have so many different fears that they encounter as they get older. And reading a book like this about a young girl who worked through those fears, or who had a fear and was able to work through that, allows for kids to say, oh, I see myself in that character. Or, oh, I also am afraid of X, Y, and Z. And look, she was able to work through that. And yes, she was scared. She talked to her mom about it. And okay, she, took it slow and she worked through those things. And so my goal is to have this book be read and, to children, and for children to be able to see themselves in this story and in the main character, and feel less alone in whatever fear they might have. And then also to feel like, okay, I got this. I can work through that. I can do what Kat did in this book and work through my fear at whatever rate is best for you. So my goal is always to put books out that allow people to feel less alone in their journey and feel seen in whatever their fear might be. And I really hope that happens with this book too.
I'm sure it is. I'm glad you mentioned being mindful of the parents, because, a good children's book is going to be read 400, 500, 600 times. And,
I know.
You want to be able to sit down and read that book with just as much energy the 500th time as you did with the first time. And having read thousands of books to my kids, there are a lot of books that just don't do that.
I know. It's really interesting. I mean, I find myself reading so many books where I'm just, and I love of course, as a parent, you're aware of like the importance of repetition with reading books, and, kids love to read the same book over and over again, or hear the same story that you're telling them. So it really is such an important part to keep parents and caregivers in mind when writing these books, of, making sure that they also enjoy it.
Yeah, yes. I had a really fun book I had just, that I read to my buddy Finn this morning, that I could read to him over and over again. It was, a recent guest, the guest that was featured on yesterday's podcast, Adam Wallace, wrote a book, Turkey in Disguise. And Finn and I had a blast reading that, because it gave me a chance to do all sorts of voices and expressions and throws of emotion. But speaking of that, you brought up your parents and your parents reading to you. I'm wondering, what was it like having the Terminator read bedtime stories to you?
Animated, of course. It's very similar to how I see my husband like tap into so many different voices and characters when he's reading to our kids. It's a very sweet thing that I'm like, this is perfect for both of their careers, to be able to really be humbled by, reading children's books to kids, and then also having your kids say like, I don't like that voice, or I don't like it when you do that character, or I like this character, or can you change your voice a little bit here? So the kids are very lucky that they're able to, have those different voices and have very animated story time. And then when I come around, it's a very different experience for them, but we still have a lot of fun. So it's nice.
Yes, I noticed Finn today when I changed the voice of the turkey. He caught it and he gave me kind of a dirty look, and I go, all right, let me find that voice again.
I know there's nothing like kids to bring you back down to earth, to let you know that whatever voice you're doing or whatever thing you think might be amazing, they'll tell it to you straight and tell you that it's not the case. So I love that.
Katherine, you're also the host of BDA, Baby before, during, and after podcast. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think I messed up the title, so you got to give us the right title.
Well, I was really lucky to be able to start a Instagram live show after I had my first daughter 5 years ago in the height of the pandemic. And I was kind of, searching around for community in the parenting space and just starting my chapter of motherhood. And I started a Instagram live series that's now a podcast called BDA Baby, that stands for Before, During, and After Baby. And we have a guest on every week, and we talk about everything under the umbrella of before, during, and after baby. So that could be fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, your relationship after baby, pelvic floor, breastfeeding, IVF, all the different, subjects that go under that umbrella. And it's been such a beautiful experience for me to build this community and to have such great conversations. And I love it, and I'm so passionate about it. And it's exciting to kind of have that community and also have the ability to talk to such interesting people through all three of my pregnancies and postpartum. And I'm just really loving it. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Tell me, what's next on your children's book writing career? Do you have a work in progress?
I mean, I always have works in progress in my mind, especially, as a parent now, and also just having my daughters experience the joys of being around animals is something that is near and dear to my heart, and something that I really truly love. And then just to watch my kids blossom and grow into their own people and their own personalities is such a fun thing. So I feel like I'm always thinking of different ideas that would be fun for a children's book. I want to get this one out. And also, I think I always thought, children's books are so simple and easy. And then they take up 2 years of your life to make sure that they get to be as perfect and as special as you want them to be. So I'm really trying to also be present in the launch of this book and really be able to, celebrate this coming out and getting it into as many people's homes as possible. So I'm really excited to be present in the launch of this, and always coming up with different ideas for the next books to come.
Awesome. Well, tell everybody, please, where they can go to find out more about Kat and Brandy, find out more about the podcast, and find out more about you.
Well, I am big on Instagram. Is probably the best place to follow along with the book tour. We're doing a book tour, which my book tours now as a mom of 3 look very different than my book tours in the past, but I'm still really excited about all the events we have planned and that we're continuing to plan. So going on my Instagram, which is Katherine Schwarzenegger, is a great place to follow along as we launch the book. The book's available for pre-order and also is out as of November 4th. So getting it in your local bookstore is the best place to get it. And then also KatherineSchwarzenegger.com shows all the different stops that we're going to be making along the way to, do book tour fun activities. So
awesome. Yeah. And we also encourage our friends, even if you get your own copy to have at home, and we think you should, go on down to a public library and ask them if they have Kat and Brandy on their shelves. And if not, well, why not? You should.
Yes, exactly. I love that. That's something that that reminds me of what my grandma would do whenever my mom would come out with her book. She'd go to every local bookstore and library and make sure that they had my mom's books when I was growing up. So I love that you just brought that up. It's so special.
Well, I think your grandmother probably had a little bit more sway than I would have when I go to my local library, but they do listen to us. So go down, see if you have the sway too.
Yes.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Kat and Brandy. Our guest has been Katherine Schwarzenegger Pratt. Katherine, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you so much for having me.
Get ready, adventure fans. Toby Baxter is back. In I Heart Riverhome, the 4th thrilling book in the Adventures of Toby Baxter series, written by Tim Wright, 13-year-old Toby dives into his most unexpected quest yet. He's battling trolls, navigating the sandpit of love, and getting stuck with an LOVE compass. But when the girl of his dreams, Rainey, is kidnapped, Toby must summon more courage than ever before. All 4 books in the Adventures of Toby Baxter series have been honored as Reading with Your Kids certified great reads, each packed with fast-paced action, humor, and heart. So grab your copy of I Heart Riverhome today and join Toby on an unforgettable journey through Riverhome, where every page is an adventure. Well, I'll let you know that this episode of Reading with Your Kids is also brought to you by We're Going on a Space Adventure, written by Marie Nichols. This is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Blasting off and speeding through space, Graham cheers to the moon and beyond. But Bracken quickly learns that Graham has a fear of flying and that he must manage control of the spaceship. On the moon, they narrowly escape a hideous monster as a crater explodes, and on Mars, they need to outrun Martian creatures or risk becoming their dinner. Hoping to find a friendlier planet, they decide to try Jupiter. Then clank, 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 something is attacking the spaceship. You and your kids are going to love this book. It's fun. It's exciting. It celebrates intergenerational friendships, and we love those. We're Going on a Space Adventure by Marie Nichols. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Join us right now from one of the prettiest cities in the nation. In fact, I think it's the oldest city in the United States. Please welcome to the show the authors of Our Amazing Minds, Jeffrey and Laura May. Jeffrey and Laura, how are you? Welcome to Reading with Your Kids.
We're great. Thanks for having us.
Delighted to have you on. Am I right? The St. Augustine's is the first city in the continental U.S. Am I right about that?
It is. It's the oldest city in the country.
Yeah. And it really is a beautiful city. I spent a lot of time there. I just told Laura that I worked out at the Planet Fitness in St. Augustine's a number of times on my way to somewhere else.
So funny.
Lauren, why don't we start with you? Can you tell us what Our Amazing Minds is all about?
Yes, absolutely. So it is a children's picture book about autism. So our son, Jackson, was diagnosed with autism when he was 3.5 years old. And we started doing all kinds of research then so that we could understand as adults. We didn't know anything about autism at the time. And as he got older and older as a child, we realized we need some resources to help him understand as well. And so that kind of gave us the idea to write this children's picture book to help children understand what autism is.
Well, I'm glad you guys are here because I need help understanding what autism is. I've said here in the podcast many times, I'm almost 100. So when I was growing up, we didn't have kids. We didn't hear the word autistic. We had some kids who were different than us, but we didn't hear the word autism. And, when I got out of college and went into human services, that is the first time I heard the term autism and, worked with people who were on the autism spectrum. But those were folks who were very severely, I'm not sure, affected by autism. The kids that I was working with weren't able to talk. If they were, they were limited to, maybe 10 words that they would repeat over and over. And now I'm hearing statistics that I think the last time I heard it was 1 in 34 boys are on the autism spectrum. So either we didn't understand what we're talking about, or there's been a whole lot more kids who've been born on the spectrum, or I don't know. Help, Jeffrey. You're a dude. Help me out here.
Well, actually, the latest one from the CDC is 1 in 31. And, some of that can just be attributed to, having more information, more knowledge about what autism is. And that's causing more parents to be, aware as they're, being there for early intervention in a kid's life, and getting them tested and getting them the resources they need at an earlier age. And I think that's why you're hearing more commonality in that now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And there's a huge spectrum between the kids that I work with who were living in group homes and whatnot, or needing 24-hour assistance, to now where kids are living full lives and going to college and becoming very successful and on the autism spectrum.
Yeah, that's very true. So that's why it is called a spectrum disorder. So when a child receives a diagnosis, they're given a level. So there's level 1, 2, and 3. And so what you mentioned, Jed, was the more profound autism, a level 3. So really the levels just tell you how much support a person might need on the spectrum for different needs that they have. And that's one of the reasons we wrote Our Amazing Minds in the way that we did, because we didn't find any other children's books that showed representation for the different levels. So our son Jackson was diagnosed at a level 2. I would say as he's received therapies and support over the years, if he were to be diagnosed now, I imagine he'd probably be a level 1. But in our book, we have Martin, a character that is non-speaking, and he uses a tablet to communicate. But you can see in the book, he can still create friendships. He can still learn. He can still be involved in a classroom setting. And so we wanted our book to have representation of the different levels of the spectrum. We felt like that was something that was missing in the children's books that were already out there.
So important. I have shared this on the podcast back in 1988. I was hired by a school serving kids with severe developmental disabilities, and a lot of those kids are on the autism spectrum. And I think the school hired me. This was a school that was within a hospital setting. And school system were paying, at that, even back then, close to $100,000 a year to send kids to this school. And there was just the start of trying to get the Americans with Disabilities Act passed. And so there was talk about, well, we should integrate these kids into typical situations. And so this school went out and hired a guy who had never worked with in a school for kids with developmental disabilities, who wanted to become a professional clown. And they said, this is a guy that we're going to run our integration program, because he'll fail. And then we'll just prove to everybody that the kids need to be in this hospital setting. And it didn't fail. It was a huge success, not because of me, but just because it was a great idea. The kids, as you're talking about Martin with the communication device, we integrated kids into a typical school, and it was a school in the city of Boston that had the worst of every statistic. The most kids from single-parent homes, and most kids from homes where a parent is incarcerated, parents using drugs, whatever. And we integrated the kids into those classrooms, and the quote-unquote typical kids in those classes adored our kids and just welcomed them with open arms. And I'm proud to say that the school and the hospital closed 2 years later because all the systems brought their kids back and integrated them into their own schools.
Wow,
Love
that's
that
incredible.
so
Yeah. School killer. No. But we've come a long way since then. Obviously, we still have schools that are in hospital settings, and we do have a lot of kids who need a lot of assistance. But I still think we have a long way to go still in terms of helping our kids who are different fit in to our communities. What say you as parents of a kid on the spectrum?
Absolutely. I would say, with 1 in 31 kids being diagnosed with autism, there's going to be a kid in every classroom, every sports team, every community, a small community that's on the spectrum. And we're seeing, increases in the amount of resources that are offered to these kids. But at the same time, it's disproportionate to the amount of kids being diagnosed, the amount of resources that are being offered to them. So we really want to advocate that what you're saying is like each one of these kids is different. Like neurotypical kids already need to be taught differently, and everybody has different learning styles. And then you incorporate autism into that, and each kid is super unique in the way that they need to be taught and even resourced. So we really hope that we would see an increase in that as we continue to see that rise.
Yeah. Well, I agree. One of the things that's frustrating, my beautiful wife taught in the Boston Public Schools for 34 years. And in that time, and she was a special needs teacher, but in that time, I would say every 8 or 9 years, they would come out with a new curriculum. And instead of sitting down and saying, you know what, there are some kids who learn how to read really well with phonics, and there are other kids who don't. So we need to throw phonics out and bring in this other thing that, not everybody learns it with this curriculum. So we're going to throw that one out too. And it's like, hey, how about some kids learn with phonics, some kids don't learn, they learn with this other thing. How about we just do everything and offer the kids what they need to learn?
Exactly. Yeah, you've got to meet the kids where they're at. And in order to do that, people have to take the time to understand each kid for their uniqueness and what they bring to the table. So, that's another part of our goal with Our Amazing Minds in this book is really just to educate everyone on what autism is, what makes them unique, and celebrating the differences and the unique gifts that these individuals bring to the world.
You brought it up. Can you explain to me what autism is?
So autism spectrum disorder is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by two major components. So there is a communication struggle, that could be, anywhere from, like you mentioned, being non-speaking, not using words to communicate at all, to using short words and phrases, repeating words and phrases. Social skills and challenges fall into that communication criteria. And then there's also a criteria of restrictive, repetitive behaviors. And so a lot of autistic individuals have a narrow focus, maybe when it comes to certain interests. There's, one thing that they really, really love and obsess over, and that's all they talk about. Or I'm kind of stereotyping here, giving some examples, but, you think about a kid that gets really focused on just lining up cars. I remember our son did that for a while when he was like 4 years old. He would line up little Hot Wheels cards for 4 or 5 hours at a time. What 4 and 5 year old sits for 4 and 5 hours at a time? But that was a restrictive, repetitive behavior. So it's those two major things that you have to see present that bring challenges in an individual's life for them to be considered on the autism spectrum.
Yeah. Once that diagnosis is made, I imagine for a lot of parents, it's devastating to hear that. But I don't think that, maybe. How did you react? I don't want to assume. What was your reaction when you had the diagnosis?
For sure. I would say we both had differing reactions. Laura went into immediate, let's figure out what we need to do for Jackson. We need to figure out the amount of resources we need, where we need to find those resources. And, just completely candidly, as a dad, I went into what I would call a little bit more mourning. I was, the life that I expected to have with my son, like I was like, was this going to be different? Am I going to get to have the father-son relationship, the stereotypical father-son relationship with my son? And as we've, gone through those journeys together, not separate, we've navigated this world together, even though we've had, differing emotions at times. We can't imagine now Jackson being made any differently than he is. It's been a complete joy, to see him tackle every challenge that's come his way. one of the coolest things, even recently, to Terry onto that, is he got to take the book to his class. He's in a mainstream classroom, and got to share the book, read it out loud to his class, and got to say, I'm going to take questions about autism. What do you want to know? So just, having, thinking 7 years ago to that moment where I'm like, what is our life going to look like, to now, watching him on the soccer field, running around and have friends, and his friends call him by name and him wave as we walk to school. It's incredible. And I can't imagine him being made any differently than he is.
Yeah. Laura, did you have to turn to Jeffrey and go, look, big guy, suck it up. We got work to do.
A little bit. I mean, I certainly experienced some of the same emotions that he did. There's anxiety, fear of the unknown. There's grief over this future that you've imagined. So I don't want to portray like I just jumped into research mode immediately. I certainly felt all those emotions too. Receiving any sort of diagnosis for your child. As a loving parent, you feel that, you take on that weight, you hurt for your child if you imagine a life where they struggle. So I think it's normal and it's okay to feel those emotions. You got to work through those. You can't just sweep those under the rug. So we just worked through them a little bit differently.
Yeah. What were some of the I'm curious, I don't know if you know, but what were some of the questions that your son's classmates asked when he read your book?
Oh, good question.
That is a great question. He did tell us. Trying to remember some of them.
I remember them asking him something about the way that he communicates. He drags out the last word of every sentence. And I remember, I think someone asked him their word, do you talk funny because of your autism? And he just said, yeah, I do. I remember that being one of the questions.
For sure. And one of the ways he stems, the way he copes is, he flaps his hands. And he's been asked before, why do you do that? And he's like, I do it because I'm excited. When I get happy and I'm, have a moment of joy, I flap my hands, and that's how I display that. So those were a couple of the questions.
Yeah. Laura, we have lots of parents out there listening to the podcast, and some of them may be welcoming a child into their life in the future. If they receive if they start to suspect and then receive a diagnosis, what kind of advice would you give to those parents?
That's a great question. I think I've got two different pieces of advice. Even before receiving a diagnosis, go with your gut. Go with your mama gut. Go with your dad 1,000%. Gut. We had to push and we had to fight for a diagnosis for Jackson. Early on, at your well check visits, there's a screening that every child goes through, and Jackson technically passed the screening, but as parents, we knew something was a little bit different. And so I would advise parents, if you have concerns, if you're questioning, keep pushing, keep asking other professionals, get referrals if you can. So that's one piece. And then the other really, really important piece, once you receive a diagnosis, is early intervention. I would say we welcomed and we sought out every resource we could get, from speech therapy, occupational therapy, social skills groups. We were involved in a developmental preschool program. So I would say push and fight for your child to get all the available resources as soon as possible. There is a lot of research that the earlier you start these things, the more effective they are. So
yeah, we attribute where Jackson is today to early intervention in his life, speech, OT. I think when the kids are young and you're navigating the thought of it, is something going on there, it's easy to not want to address it, because if you don't address it, you're like, it's not there. But at the same time, trusting your mom gut, trusting your dad gut, and getting them the help they can as early as possible is truly pivotal in these kids' lives.
Yeah, yeah. And as a dad, one advice I'd give to all dads is don't get in the way of mom's gut.
1,000%.
If the mom has a feeling, just go with it and support you, babe.
Absolutely.
You're probably right.
You're a smart man, Jed.
1,000%.
Hey, before I ask you guys to tell us where we can go to find out more about the book, I wanted to ask just what kind of conversations do you think families can have? This obviously is a great book for a family with a kid who is on the autism spectrum, but I also think it is a really important book for all families because, as you said, Jeffrey, your kid is going to be in a class with a kid on the spectrum. They're going to be on a team with a kid on the spectrum. They may have a teacher who's on the spectrum.
Absolutely.
At some point. What kind of conversations do you think those quote unquote typical families can have as they're reading Our Amazing Minds?
Yeah, I think a conversation just around celebrating differences. Autism is just one of the many ways that people are different, right? Mm-hmm. We all have different interests. We all have different abilities. And so I think it's important to talk about autism in a positive way, that this is just one of the differences that someone may have. It's not something to look down upon. It's not something to judge others for. It's just one of the ways that they're different. And I think, talking to a child on a level that they understand based on how old they are, I think that's a great way to approach the conversation for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Hey, and again, before I ask you to tell us about your website, I want to tell you guys about a website I love. Underneath my hoodie here, I'm wearing a T-shirt, has a picture of a pickle on it, and it says, "Kindness is a big deal to everyone." And I get these T-shirts from a website called BeKindToEveryone.com. I love it. A family had a young woman on the spectrum, and they started a T-shirt company so that their daughter could have something to do, a place to work. In the couple of years that I've been following them on socials and buying their T-shirts, this young woman who's, I think is probably 21 or 22, her communication has just grown so much, and she's, so the T-shirts are great. They just remind everybody to be kind to everyone and to be loving and whatnot. And also just to see the progress of somebody that 1988 would have been institutionalized and put in a home, to know that now she's out there and she has a job and she has friends. It's beautiful to see. So, check out BeKindToEveryone.com, and also check out Laura and Jeffrey's website, and they're going to tell us all about that right now.
Yeah, so our website is ouramazingminds.org. And from there you can see a picture of our family and Jackson. And we also we can't leave out our little girl, JoJo. She is the cutest and the best. She is just as big a part of this journey as Jackson is and we are. So you can see all of that and also purchase the book. And it's also available on Amazon as well.
Awesome. We've had a really great time speaking to the authors of Our Amazing Minds. Our guests have been Jeffrey and Laura May. My friends, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Jed.
Hey, and that brings us to the end of another magical episode of Reading with Your Kids. If this episode made you smile or gave you something to think about, please consider sharing a link to the show with somebody that you love. Also, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review. And of course, we love all of our subscribers, and we hope that you will become one. We'd love for you to connect with us on social media. We love so many things. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/readingwithyourkids. On Instagram, it's @readingwithyourkids. And on X, it's @JedleyMagic. We have a great YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And of course, our website is readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank our special guests for sharing their wisdom, Katherine Schwarzenegger Pratt. Please be sure to check out Kat and Brandy. I also want to thank Jeffrey and Laura May. Please be sure to check out our amazing minds. Really appreciate that our three guests were willing to share their wisdom. Want to thank our amazing sponsors. And, of course, I want to thank my team for helping us bring these stories to families everywhere. Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, and, of course, I want to thank my beautiful wife, whose love and laughter light up my every single day. But most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you for being part of this journey. By reading with your kids, you're spreading kindness, imagination, and love throughout the world. Please keep reading, keep dreaming, and keep making the world better, one page at a time.